As a GM, my first instinct when I find a new homebrew or I make a new homebrew is not to brag about it, because I don't want the surprise to be lost when I finally show it to my players. But if I'm going to put up the occasional review of homebrew on here, then I can't keep the best stuff hidden in my computer for the eventual day when I finally do use it in a game. So in honor of that goal, I present to you the Homunculi. This particular homebrew was created and linked to on Reddit by user Super Antivenom. If I can find the original post, I'll link to it below. The homunculus in the monster manual, found on page 188, is a squirrel-sized companion that acts as an extension of its creator, with the two sharing thoughts, senses, and language through a mystical bond. The spell to create a homunculus can be found in Xanathar's Guide to Everything on page 152. That is a homunculus in Dungeons & Dragons, but these are homunculi from Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. In the source material, a homunculus is an artificial human, often with a philosopher's stone at their core, and they usually have some kind of power gifted to them as well. It's actually never really said how they got those powers. I'm assuming that their creator just wanted them to have them. Since D&D has a pre-existing use of the word homunculus, I recommend rebranding these probably as greater homunculus, or plural greater homunculi, and rather than defining them as artificial humans, we call them artificial humanoids. There are 7 homunculi, each one named after one of the 7 deadly sins. The reasons for that aren't really important for the purposes of this video, so I won't be going into that. I do like that Super Antivenom wrote a small description of each homunculi, and he notes what the most likely D&D race they are made to resemble is. Lust would most likely be a high elf, gluttony a rotund human, greed a drow, sloth a Goliath, wrath a high elf, which actually surprised me a little bit, envy a human, but envy is a shapeshifter, so... and pride, a high elf. It's interesting to note that 3 of these 7 are high elves, and these are the 3 that are most or actually I think that did interact with humans the most in the source material. Wrath and pride had public personas, and you could argue that lust would have been somewhat of an intelligence gatherer. So it could be interesting to suggest that Amestris in a D&D setting would be ruled by high elves, or at least primarily by high elves. All the homunculi are rated at a CR 14, except for Envy, whose base form is CR 14, but whose true form bumps up to a CR of 17. Each homunculi also has vulnerability to fire and cold, and resistance to slashing, piercing, and bludgeoning damage, as well as immunity to poison and immunity to the poison condition. Wrath is the only exception to this rule, with only resistance to piercing, slashing, and bludgeoning damage. Each homunculi also has proficiency with strength, dexterity, constitution, and charisma saves, with a few exceptions. Gluttony has proficiency with only strength and charisma saves. Envy has strength, con, and charisma in its base form, and this switches to strength, dex, and constitution in its true form. And pride is the outlier, with dexterity, constitution, and wisdom saves. The final ability shared by all the homunculi is called Rapid Regeneration. The Philosopher's Stone at their core allows them to spend hit die at the end of their turn as though they had just gone through a short rest. They regain all hit die after a long rest. When all hit die are spent this way, they can't use this ability again until the next dawn, when they regain all their hit die automatically. If they are reduced to 0 hit points, all hit die that they have remaining are immediately spent to heal them. And if they are reduced to 0 hit points and have no hit die remaining, then they die and their Philosopher's Stone is destroyed. There is one weird mistake that they made in this. I'm not sure if it was intentional or not. They gave this rapid regeneration to Wrath and not to Pride. Whereas in the source, obviously, it would be the reverse. So if you want to be true to the source material, you would take it off of Pride, or you would take it off of Wrath and give it to Pride. For those curious why Wrath doesn't have it, it's because they needed him to be able to age, so he was made in a slightly different way than the other homunculi. Now we take a look at Lust, the first homunculus. Anyone who's familiar with the show or the manga knows that Lust wasn't the first homunculus, but I think they numbered these in the order that they appeared in. AC of 16, 132 hit points, and 12 d10 hit die. All looking pretty nice. She has a dexterity of 20, which makes sense. I would have expected the next 20 to be in her charisma and the 18 to be in her con. Now I'm thinking of it, I should have checked to see if all of the homunculi had a 20 in constitution. It might have something to do with the way they're made and to help their regeneration along. She has enhanced beauty, giving her advantage on persuasion and deception checks when she is flirting with someone or being flirted with. Her attack is the ultimate spear, which allows her to extend her fingers up to 25 feet for 5d6 plus 5 piercing damage. damage. I would make that slashing or piercing damage, as she is able to do both. She can choose to grapple a target with a dice check 15, or retract her claws after the attack, which sounds horribly painful because that means she's grappling you by stabbing you. The second homunculus, Gluttony, probably has the worst stats of any of the homunculi because all of his mental stats are below a 10. So he will be very susceptible to magic targeting his mind. But in the show and manga, he was very dim-witted, so it does make sense. His strength and con are both 20, his AC is a 16, so with his 220 hit points, he will make a very good tank for you to use against your party. And with his 20 d10 hit die, his regeneration will definitely be pulling his weight, which is good because, look at him, there's a lot of it. His ability Digestive Enzymes just seems to kind of be a flavor ability, explaining how he's able to eat anything. I don't really think it was necessary to include that here. It's similar to Enhanced Senses, and just reading his flavorful description and not really game mechanics. They could have just stuck with his ultimate nose ability, which gives him a plus 10 to perception checks based on smell, and even allows him to fight in the dark without disadvantage. His main attack is his bite, which he can make 2 of with his multi-attack, and the damage is 3d6 plus 5 acid damage. On a hit, he can grapple an opponent, and if they fail, he swallows them whole. On each of the turns, anyone who's in his stomach needs to make a grapple check at disadvantage in order to get out. If they fail, they take 66 acid damage. So he really sounds pretty brutal, so it's probably good that his mental stats are so low. Important note is that in the manga and in the anime, his stomach is actually like a pocket dimension, so it's much bigger on the inside. So you could probably use that to explain how a 4-foot man could basically eat someone twice his size. It just likely won't be a vast void like it is in the anime, or you could make it as that, although it does make it harder to explain them taking the acid damage, I guess. Finally, he can take his true form, which extends his mouth down his body, and his rib cage extends to become teeth. This allows him to use his voracious inhale ability. This ability will swallow up anyone in a 30-foot line that doesn't succeed on a dice check 16 strength save. So he is even really good against large groups, so I can see him being a whole lot of fun to throw against a party. Greed is next. First thing we'll go over is his ultimate shield. He reorganizes the carbon in his body to create an impenetrable shield over his skin. This grants him a +4 bonus to his AC and makes him resistant to all non-magical damage. He also gains access to his enhanced unarmed strike due to his hands becoming claws, and they deal 74 plus 5 damage. He can hold the form for a minute up to 4 times a day, or 8 times a day if he only transforms his hands. In the show, the ultimate shield was literally just that, the ultimate shield. There's pretty much nothing that could harm him while he's in that form, barring special conditions, and they made the character actually pretty vain. He didn't like to have it cover his entire body because it would cover up his face, and he looked like a monster. The stat block also gives him an alternative weapon, a weirdly named longsword basically, and this is due to the background of the character in the anime. The fourth homunculus is Sloth. Goliath was a great choice for this one. You'll notice he has a speed of 55 feet, and that is because despite being Sloth, he is the fastest of the homunculi. And the burrow speed is representing how he dug a tunnel around an entire country. Extreme durability grants him an additional 25 hit points, and also allows him to add his AC, or his con modifier to his AC. Extreme super strength allows his unarmed strikes to deal d6 instead of d4, and extreme super speed increases his speed by 10 feet and also allows him to use the elephant charge as an action. The aforementioned elephant charge is a little weird as it's shown as having a reach of 55 feet, but in reality it should probably move him in a 55-foot line, and he hits anything or anyone that he moves past or through, with an unarmed strike dealing his listed 66 plus 4 damage. The fifth homunculus is Wrath. As I mentioned before, he shouldn't have rapid regeneration. He has an AC of 18, 126 hit points, and 3 attacks with his Gladius, dealing a d8 plus 4, so it's basically just a finessable longsword. His power is the ultimate eye, giving him 3 uses each of uncanny dodge and evasion, as well as true sight out to 90 feet. My normal thoughts on when I considered doing a character conversion build for Bradley is that he's basically just a 20th level fighter, and the ultimate eye would give him uncanny dodge and evasion as well as true sight, so this really met my expectations. If I removed his rapid regeneration from this stat block, I might make it to where he just flat out has uncanny dodge and evasion, but in reality I don't know if a standard combat with him in it would last long enough for him to even go beyond using these abilities 3 times each or not, so it might work out as is anyway. 6th homunculus is Envy, with the ability to transform into anything up to huge size. Outside of combat, Envy can choose what to turn into, though in combat you apparently need to roll a percentile on this transformation table, becoming anything from a spider to an adult red dragon. I feel like if any homunculus has the potential to become broken, it's Envy. Envy can make 2 attacks, an unarmed strike with a reach of 10 feet for 44 plus 4, or by turning his arm into a sword and dealing a d8 plus 4. So I don't really know why you would do that if you have the option of the unarmed strike. That comes with reach. Envy doesn't appear to have the caveat for rapid regeneration kicking in when you hit 0 hit points. Instead, if reduced to 0 hit points, Envy becomes a parasitic leech. It states Envy becomes able to possess a humanoid host and take control of them, though the ability isn't fleshed out. There's not even a dice check listed for it. Once per day, Envy can take on their true form, where he becomes a huge creature with 270 hit points, rather than the original 154, and their AC becomes 24 rather than 17. All of the physical stats increase, and all of the physical stats increase and all of the mental stats decrease. Envy's unarmed strike becomes 46 plus 6, and he gains a stomp and a tail strike. The true form is also the only homunculi that gains legendary actions and legendary resistances. Oddly enough, Envy is not my favorite homunculi, but with these abilities, it feels like it really should be like the big bad homunculus that your party would face. Moving on to the 7th and final homunculus, we have Pride. Pride's main power is Shadow Kinesis, allowing him to, as a bonus action, manipulate areas of dim light that he's in contact with to create shadow appendages out to 30 feet. These appendages can't function in darkness or in direct sunlight. Pride can perceive as though he were in any space occupied by one of these appendages, and he can also make bite and spear attacks as well. The container power is actually just an explanation for how Pride is actually this multi-eyed, mouthed, shadowy amalgamation inside of a child's body, basically. And he may attempt to move to a new body or container as an action. This ability may actually be why they neglected to give him the regeneration power. Taking over a new creature requires contested constitution checks, which continue until the target fails or succeeds 3 times. Failing, of course, means Pride takes over their body and consumes their soul, preventing them from being able to be resurrected. Pride's attack have a reach of 25 feet, with the bite dealing 2d8 plus 5 slashing damage, and the spear dealing 3d6 plus 5 piercing damage. If the bite reduces a target to 0 hit points, Pride can consume them on his next turn, and his consume ability allows him to eat a target and gain 1 trait or ability that they had, as well as adding 3 of their hit die to his maximum hit points. This potentially makes Pride infinitely powerful, so you really are going to have to exercise restraint with that ability. The rest of the PDF has information on Philosopher's Stones, but I think I'm going to put that in a separate video because I have other homebrew material involving Philosopher's Stones, and oddly enough, the Philosopher's Stone was not converted over to 5th edition, so I find that a little strange. If I were to rate this on a scale of, let's say, 1 to 5, 1 being terrible, don't use this, 5 being should have been in the game already, I would probably give this material like a 3 to a 4, maybe 3.5, something like that. 3.5. You should be able to challenge your party pretty well with these. If they're fans of the source material, the manga or the anime, I think they would enjoy running into them. And they would also they do make really good underlings for like your big bad evil villain wizard, because if you notice, none of them can cast spells, so it probably would make sense for them to be working under a wizard who can support them / they support him, or a cleric. It could go either way. I may actually draw 1 or 2 of these guys into one of my games here in the near future, so I'll have a better idea of how they work then. But until then, as always, may all your 20s be natural, and have a great day and good gaming.